All right, Ms. Amos, we're now live on YouTube.
Thank you, Ms. Mueller. I guess we can call the July TAC meeting to order here. Thank you. All right, the first item on the agenda, welcome and introductions. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for attending the conformity meeting right before this. We apologize for the delay. That went just a little bit longer than we expected, but we're ready to get started. As far as the statement regarding virtual meetings, that's still in place. Thank you to the City of Richmond for extending this through the rest of this year. Hopefully that gives staff and the board time to work on a bylaws change potentially for staff committees, obviously not for the elected officials, more than likely. Anything else on the virtual meetings? We're good to go, Chet?
Yes, I think we're good to go.
Okay. Ms. Mueller, if you could do roll call and again, the certification of a quorum.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Amos. Good morning, everyone. Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos.
Here.
Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Walker.
Here.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Here.
Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas. Mr. Flagg.
Here.
Henrico County, Vice Chair Smidler.
Here.
Mr. Yor. New Kent County, Chair LeDuc. Powhatan County, Mr. Chardine. City of Richmond, Ms. Clark. Mr. Bridewell.
Here.
Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Rutledge. DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Here.
Mr. Sparks. GRTC, Ms. Torres. Ms. Del Ross.
Here.
Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Here.
Mr. Ariel.
Here.
Right Finders, Ms. Tisdale. Mr. O'Keefe.
Here.
RMTA, Ms. Simmons. VDOT, Ms. McAdory.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning. And Mr. Herman. Thank you. That concludes the roll call for attendance. Ms. Amos, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Mueller. Moving on to the agenda. Are there any amendments that anyone would like to propose for the agenda today? Not hearing any. I'm going to move on to approval of the June 8th, 2021 TAC action meeting minutes, which were included in your packet. Does anyone have any amendments or changes to those minutes? Would anyone like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
This is Liz. So moved.
Barb, second.
So we had a motion by Liz McAdory and a second by Barb Smith to approve the June 8th TAC meetings. All in favor, aye.
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 Nay. Thank you. And that was the meeting minutes. I think I missed that last row. Okay. The next item is the open public comment period. Mr. Parsons, did we receive any public comments that should be shared?
We have not.
Okay. And as always, this meeting, I believe, is being shared on the YouTube Live for public participation. The TAC chairman's report. I'm not really the TAC chairman. I wish Kelly or Sharon could be here. And Sharon is on, but has limited connection. So that's why I'm trying to help out here this morning. I don't have anything else to share, so I'll move on to the RRTPO update. Mr. Parsons.
Thank you very much. Just a few quick tidbits for everybody's information. We are in process of working with Mr. Duran and his team at Federal Highways to, as well as VDOT and DRPT, on our federal recertification. That's going to happen in mid-August in terms of the actual meeting dates. And it'll be a joint recertification with Tri-Cities, where there will be individual meetings with many of you and elected officials in each of the two regions, and then opportunities for engagement and public involvement interspersed through that. I believe it's going to be over a 3-day period. We have assembled a package of supporting information so that federal highways can start their desktop review. And we're working closely with them to make sure everything is in place so that there aren't any last minute missing needs or issues identified. So we're looking forward to continuing that through the rest of the summer, and we'll certainly be bringing you more information about when you may be asked to participate and provide feedback on the recertification process. Item 5B, as you may know, we have, this is the start of a new fiscal year, and the new chair of the TPO is Mr. David Williams from Powhatan. And for the past, I believe, 8 years, there's been a fall transportation forum. There wasn't one last year due to COVID, but Mr. Williams is interested in reviving that. So we're working out the details of that, but I believe that I can share that it will be at Independence Golf Club in Powhatan. The date of the regular November TPO meeting, which is the 4th, if I'm not mistaken. So that first Thursday in November. And we're currently trying to brainstorm topics and things that will be timely and relevant. Obviously, there's lots of new things that have happened in the last 2 years in the region. So if any of you have ideas or interesting things that might be useful to share with the region and the public, please reach out to staff, and we're going to be working on that for the next few months to try and set up speakers and interesting information for the forum. Current work efforts were in the packet and should have been linked for you to take a look at. And those include many of the things that all of you have been involved with for the past year. Bike ped planning. We're doing a Vision Zero work group that's active, and we're gearing up for another meeting of that group. There is the public transportation work group has been a big help to GRTC in putting together their regional transportation plan. That was adopted by or accepted by the CBTA on June 25th, approved by the CBTA on June 25th. So that's well done to the public transportation work group on moving that through. As far as the CBTA update, we are almost to year number 2, and there was a long laundry list of items that needed to be done to stand up the organization, and we're almost to the end of that. So that's exciting, and thanks in big part to many of you working with your elected officials and behind the scenes to make sure that everything is in place. And we are looking forward to the last few things to be checked off the list in terms of technical efforts for the CBTA. One of those is the Transit Service Governance report, which will be on the agenda for the CBTA TAC next Monday, and then again on the agenda for the full authority next Friday, the 16th. That's one of the last big remaining technical type of things that the CBTA is working on for this year. Madam Chair, I believe that's it. I had Connect RVA 2045 update. I think the information there is we have a pretty condensed schedule for the rest of the life of the long range plan, and we are, as can be seen this morning, we are working closely with all of our partners to make sure everything is met and the plan is moving forward for public review, and we're drafting the final plan starting in a couple weeks, and it will be up for adoption on October 4th at the TPO meeting. I think that's the update I have in here.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons, and thank you to staff for working so hard to wrap up the Plan RVA or the 2045 plan. I know we've taken a long time to do the beginning part. Now it's grinding through to get it finished. I appreciate their work. The next item, item number 6 on the agenda is the FY21, FY24 TIP amendment, a request from GRTC. Mr. Bushing, will you cover this for us?
Sure. Good morning. Let me share my screen. So this is a TIP amendment request from GRTC. We received one request in this case, and it's a new project to be added to the TIP. It was missed when we added that batch of GRTC projects earlier in the year. And just as a reminder, all new projects have to demonstrate conformity for the Clean Air Act, go through the fiscal constraint demonstration, there's a public review, and it has to go through TAC and the policy board. So this is a very small project. So it's a shop equipment shed. It's $25,000. So you can see it's FY21, 7,000 is transit funding, 5307 funding, 17,000 is state match and state grants. And then there's 1,000 that is local funding. And then for air quality, we're recommending this be exempt as a reconstruction or renovation of transit buildings or structures. So the action that is requested of TAC today is recommendation on this resolution. Essentially, it's adding the project to the TIP for FY21 to FY24 and noting that the project would be considered exempt from conformity based on that building renovation or reconstruction exemption. So that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have about this request.
Thank you, Miles. I appreciate that. Do we have any questions? Do we have a motion to approve or to recommend approval of the TIP amendment request?
This is Tiffany.
Go ahead.
So moved.
I'll second. This is Liz.
Thank you. So we have a motion from Tiffany Dubinsky and a second from Liz McAdory to recommend adding the new project as discussed and that the project is considered exempt from conformity under the provisions contained in section 93.126 of the conformity rule as presented this morning. Ms. Mueller, if you could take a roll call vote on this one.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Amos. Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos.
Aye.
Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
Henrico County, Ms. Meidler.
Aye.
Powhatan County, Mr. Shardine.
Aye.
City of Richmond, Mr. Bridewell.
Aye.
DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Aye.
GRTC, Ms. Del Ross.
Aye.
Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Aye.
Right Finders, Mr. O'Keefe.
Aye.
VDOT, Ms. McAdory.
Aye.
And I want to move back up to Hanover County. I skipped that. I apologize. Mr. Flagg.
Aye.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call for this vote.
Thank you, Ms. Mueller. So the next item on the agenda, item number 7, is the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. And Mr. Bushing.
Good morning again. So this item is HIP funding that came out of the relief bill. In essence, Congress set aside almost $10 billion for additional highway funding as part of that relief bill. And through that, there's 2 separate programs at the state level, but effectively we have just over $7.6 million that the TPO needs to allocate to projects. There are some limitations on this. The funding can be used for anything that we can use for STBG, the RSTP program, as it's been known. There's also special authorized uses just for the larger of the two pots, the $6 million pot, can also be used for things like routine and preventative maintenance, operations, personnel, debt service. So there's some additional flexibility that's been built in. And again, this was all intended to make up for lost revenues from COVID. There's also some strings in terms of obligating and expending the funds. So everything must be obligated by September of 2024 and fully expended by 2029, or we lose it. So it's a little bit of a tight turnaround. We want to make sure that we don't run into issues there and lose the funding. So in terms of approaching the allocations, VDOT has very strongly recommended that we limit funding to existing projects that are already in the 6-year program so that we can ensure that the funds are obligated and it moves forward. We don't sit on them and lose them. We've also heard from several of the localities that there's interest in advancing other projects that are either not part of the TPO's program or new projects like studies that haven't been selected in the past. So based on the different views and what we've heard, we prepared 3 options for the TAC to consider. And what we're asking for today is basically TAC to give us a direction on which option do you want us to bring back for you to review and then recommend to the policy board. So option 1, this is the approach most in line with VDOT's recommendation. So essentially what this would do is we would take this HIP funding and we would use it to replace the STBG or CMAQ funding that's already on existing TPO projects. And it would be for a future phase. Basically, we can't replace existing allocations if it's already a phase that's been authorized, but it would be replacing the RSTP or CMAQ funds for a future phase. So this would probably be FY23, FY24 allocation money. And then that would free up $7.6 million in our existing STBG or CMAQ funding, which we could then reallocate to other projects, either new projects or existing projects that still need additional funds. You may recall with the RSTP program in particular, we had a very large balance to complete the projects because of the funding cuts this past year. So this would help to address a lot of those issues. It would at least get us about halfway to where we needed to be. And I think the funding that's been restored in the out years, if that continues forward, we should be back in a good place with this approach. So again, this is most in line with VDOT's recommendation. So that's the option, the first option. The second option largely follow that same blueprint, essentially replacing RSTP or CMAQ money with the HIP funding. But we would consider opening up a very limited application period as well for studies only. The reason being we didn't fund any studies in the past round because of the funding cuts, and studies are essentially the necessary first step before projects can even advance in a lot of cases before they're ready to even be submitted for any other funding sources. So this would at least get the study started still. And then primarily we'd be using the funds to offset other RSTP CMAQ allocations. The risk is a little bit higher with this approach. We have had some studies in the past that have not been completed quickly. So there is the risk that these wouldn't be obligated on time and we could lose funding. But they are only a single phase, so it's a little easier than if we were trying to take on a full new project with these funds. Option 3 is the highest risk approach, but this would be the most flexible. Essentially, we would hold an application process for these funds, just like we do with RSTP usually. And it would be open to existing projects, both TPO funded and ones that are outside funded. So say a smart scale project that needed additional funding. This would be difficult for us to administer because we then have to track all the other pots of money as well. And we wouldn't have the flexibility if it wasn't already a TPO project to be able to put more RSTP or CMAQ and move money around as needed to ensure that these projects advance to get the funds obligated. So this is the most risky, but it would provide the most flexibility to the project sponsors to get money on projects that need additional funding. So those are the 3 options that we looked at. We were trying to stay consistent with VDOT's recommendation to only look at the SIP existing projects with the one exception of the studies. Our recommendation is to stick with option 1, which is strictly replacing the RSTP CMAQ funding that's already on our existing projects. This is the easiest one for us to implement. It's got the least risk, and the other benefit is primarily that we'd have $7.5 million additional funding for our next round of allocations, which would start in October. So it would free up a lot of money for our next selection process. So what we're looking for today is tax direction so that we can start working with VDOT to prepare any of these options. So this is the requested action. It's essentially that TAC is directing staff to work on an allocations plan consistent with option 1 as outlined. And we've prepared those other options for discussion as well, but this is our recommended action. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that TAC has.
Thank you, Miles, for explaining that so well. Does anyone have any questions about the various options or the funds in general? A quiet crowd here today. Talking about 7.6 million. It's very exciting. Ms. McAdory, did you have anything to share with VDOT? I'm sorry, who is that?
Oh, it's me, Tiffany. I just had a question. I might have missed this during your discussion. So if you were to go with option 1, what would you do with the replaced RRTP and CMAQ funds?
Sure. So what we would do is during the FY23 to FY28 allocation cycle, which would be the applications would start in October, we would essentially have that additional funding to either select new projects or to help fill some of those deficits in the RSTP program where we had, I think it was about 20 million in balance to complete. That was beyond what we were projecting last year as able to fund.
Okay.
So it would fill a lot of the holes that we had.
Perfect. Thank you.
This is Barb. I've got a question.
Go ahead, Barb.
Did you think about doing option 1, but then going to the projects that were submitted in the fall and trying to fund those as they were ranked?
No. So the reason we hadn't looked at that approach is the allocations have changed. As you're all aware, the FY23 to 28 allocation were reduced when we first developed the allocations plan, and then they were all restored in the final plan. So the idea was we're likely going to have a lot more available. So to make it fair and even, everything would go through the same competitive process, and this would just add additional funding to that. So it'd basically be the same process as normal, except now with the new guidelines, which were recently approved by the policy board. But the idea was that it would go through that same competitive process rather than going back, last year's done, we'll start with the fresh with the new balance, essentially.
I'll make a motion to recommend option 1.
Recommend option 1 to ask staff to prepare a funding plan based off of option 1.
Yes, sorry. That's exactly it.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
And this is
Do we have a
Liz. I'll
second?
second. This is Liz. I'll
Thank you.
second. Yep.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Barb Smith and a second by Liz McAdory to ask staff to prepare a funding plan based off of option 1 as presented. Ms. Mueller, if you could take roll call vote, please.
Yes, thank you. Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos.
Aye.
Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
Hanover County, Mr. Flagg. Henrico County, Ms. Smidler.
Aye.
Powhatan County, Mr. Shardine.
Aye.
City of Richmond, Mr. Bridewell.
Aye.
DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Aye.
GRTC, Ms. Del Ross.
Aye.
Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Aye.
Ride Finders, Mr. O'Keefe.
Aye.
And VDOT, Ms. McAdory.
Aye.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call for item number 7.
Thank you. We will move on to item number 8, transportation, the TA set-asides. Mr. Bushing.
Sure. Good morning again. So this is the final item I have for you, and this one is not an action item. This is just a reminder and a request So as you're all probably aware, the TA set-aside program, the pre-application deadline was this month. So that's closed now. So you should have your list of projects that you'll be submitting already. All projects that are within the MPO area need an endorsement from the MPO to be submitted. So we need a list of all your projects. If you could all just email me the project name, description, cost, and how much you're requesting in funding, we can put together that resolution to bring back to you at the next TAC meeting. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions? Okay, then. Thank you, Miles. We'll move on to item number 9, the draft regional conformity report. Mr. Ariel.
Good morning, everybody. Let me share my screen first. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the draft regional conformity report. We had an interagency consultation meeting before the TAC meeting. So some of you were there, so I'll be very brief about what we are asking the TAC for. So the conformity analysis is a demonstration with compliance with the Clean Air Act of 1990. So previously, Richmond area was a non-attainment. And then for the 8-hour ozone, the Richmond area is not exactly the Richmond regional area, but it includes 5 of our localities, Richmond, Henrico, Chesterfield, Hanover, Charles City, and Ashland. And then it includes some of the localities in the Tri-Cities area as well. So it's different from the Richmond regional area. So previously it was an 8-hour ozone non-attainment area, which means we were doing bad on ozone. And then later it became maintenance, and now it's attainment based on the 2008 as well as the 2015 8-hour ozone standards, which are more stringent than the 1997 8-hour ozone standards. But we had a court ruling in 2018, which required continued demonstration of the conformity under the previous 1997 standards, which is kind of anti-black sliding in conformity terms. So project included in the draft regional conformity report includes project from the entire Richmond 8-area ozone attainment area. So it includes all the projects from Connect RBA 2045 for the 6 localities, which we have in the 8-hour ozone attainment area. And then also includes projects for those localities from the FY 21 to 24 TIP. And then also for all the localities which are in the area for Tri-Cities, MPO, and their TIP as well. So for Tri-Cities, it's based on their previous long-range transportation plan 2040. They'll be updating the long-range transportation plan, I think, next year. So once that's done, there's going to be another draft conformity report developed, and we'll have another interagency consultation report for their long-range transportation plan. So this process requires an interagency consultation group meeting, which is basically all the members of the localities as well as state agencies as well as federal agencies. So we had that meeting this morning. Also, for this process, we need to undergo a public review period before we can actually ask the RRTPO for adoption. So during the last meeting on July 1st, Policy Board authorized the TAC to review the draft list as well as the draft report, and then open the public review period. The draft report, I think, would be available today. So the action is basically to ask the RRTPO to open a 15-day comment period for public review and input of the draft regional conformity report to run between July 9th, which is day after tomorrow, to July 24th. So that's actually a 16-day public review period. And I think that's all I have. We have Jim and Dan from VDOT Environmental as well here today in this meeting. And if you want to ask any questions to them, I think they are also available. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Sulabh. And I was just going to ask if you would go back to that slide. Thank you. So we need an action item to open up the public input period from July 9th to July 24th.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions before we get a motion? Comments? Okay, is there a motion to open up the 15-day comment period?
This is Liz. So moved.
Thanks, Liz.
Barb Smith, second.
So I have a motion from Liz McAdory and a second by Barb Smith to open up the 15-day public comment period for public review and input on the draft regional conformity plan. That period would run from July 9th to July 24th. Ms. Mueller, if you could take roll call vote, please.
Yes, thank you. Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos.
Aye.
Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Aye.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Aye.
Hanover County, Mr. Flagg.
Aye.
Henrico County, Ms. Meidler.
Aye.
Powhatan County, Mr. Chardine.
Aye.
City of Richmond, Mr. Bridewell.
Aye.
DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Aye.
GRTC, Ms. Del Ross.
Aye.
Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Aye.
Right Finders, Mr. O'Keefe.
Aye.
And VDOT, Ms. McAdory.
Aye.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call for item number 9.
We're moving on to our agency updates, I believe. Yes, the first on the list is Ms. Dubinsky with DRPT.
Good morning. So I just have a brief update today. First of all, just as a reminder to everyone, CTB approved our final 6-year improvement program on June 21st. I'm sure Liz will have a little bit more details than I will have on the ZIP, but just for everyone's reference, if you are curious about what the final version looks like, that is a link to it on our website. As another note, for all of our grant recipients who were awarded funds for the FY22 cycle, we are hosting a post-award webinar next Tuesday, July 13th at 1 p.m. There was a press release in the email blast, but if you did not receive the link, we do encourage everyone to send at least one representative to attend to the webinar. And I believe for Section 5310, this is also a required attendance as part of the award for the funds. Moving on to transit equity and modernization, I think I've mentioned before that we have started this work and that we have now selected our consultant, which is Kimley Horn. We are planning to do a brief to the TPO. Hopefully in probably like August or September, I'll work with Chet to kind of figure out the schedule. We wanted to make sure that we had some significant findings in terms of the initial work to present, as well as kind of a primer as to what this report will look like. Our big first deliverable will be a preliminary report to General Assembly in December, so we will have our work cut out for us, and then we will have the final report that will be due in the next year. Moving on to TRIP, our Transit Rider Incentive Program. I think I've mentioned this before in kind of passing in terms of this program. Over the last month or so, they have been seeking public comment on the draft program guidance and policy. Right now, we are hoping that we will have approval on the program guidance at this month's CTB meeting, and that we will open our application period for the summer. For those who have been kind of tracking it, we have already been receiving requests for like interest in terms of projects. So if there's still interest from any of our transit partners or any localities in terms of this program, you are still welcome to submit something or work with any of your DRPT representatives to see what you can submit for the application period. All information is available on the DRPT website at that link that I provided in the update. Last but not least, Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, they last met on June 28th. and they have more meetings that will be coming. Of note for the VPRA that's not noted here is that they did release what would be the organizational chart. And so what most of us had thought would maybe be about 20 to 30 is now projected to 40 to 60, depending on the overall needs and the work that'll be defined for VPRA. I do also know that there's a couple of job postings, so I don't want to pilfer from anyone here in tech, but if there is interest in seeing what's going to be available in terms of the organizational chart and opportunities, you can find that also on DRPT's website for VPRA. And that is all I have for my update. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tiffany. Does anyone have any questions? Appreciate that report. I don't mind pilfering because I'm desperate. So if anyone knows a senior planner, Chesterfield took mine, but not too many hard feelings. So moving on for our next update, GRTC, Ms. Torres.
This is Emily. Adrian is actually on a much deserved vacation this week, so you'll be getting my very abbreviated update on GRTC. I just have 2 meeting updates actually for you. So this Thursday at 5 p.m., GRTC will be hosting a virtual public meeting to share updates on service changes that we have scheduled for September. And of course, GRTC's monthly board meeting will be held on July 20th at 8 a.m. And we invite, of course, you all to attend both of these meetings. You can find links on our website. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. O'Keefe, do you want to give us a Ride Finders update, please?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of things of note, and I say a couple, but it's really more than a couple, so I do apologize. We did attend the Commuter Assistance Program Demonstration Workshop that was held by DRPT. Ms. Tisdale did hold the Ride Finders Advisory Board meeting last week as well. We continue to promote air quality education and worked on our air quality awareness pledge announcement. We continue to work on our It's a Green Thing air quality campaign. We promoted RVA bike shares survey regarding the new bike station and their locations. We also promoted DRPT's public comment period on the policy brief for the new transit ridership incentive program, as well as communicated GRTC's continuation of the zero fares. We also attended Groundwork RVA's summer bike pass and bike races. We presented a presentation to Commute Smart New Hampshire on how Ride Finders does employer outreach. They're just start a TDM program. So they had asked for our input on how we do that. So we had a nice meeting with the folks up in New Hampshire. We continue to support GRTC on our microtransit program and are working with them on some input on that. And the last thing I have, Madam Chair, is I just completed a 2-year course at the University of South Florida for a commuter choice certificate. And that is all that I have.
Well, congratulations, John. I'm sure that was a lot of work, and that Ride Finders is happy to have all that extra knowledge.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any questions for Ride Finders? We got a lot going on right now.
Thank you.
Ms. McAdory, VDOT.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, everybody again. So I'll give you a quick brief update on what happened at the June CTB meeting related to VDOT stuff. There was a pretty interesting presentation on traffic and transportation trends. It discussed national and Virginia trends, and it discusses COVID and non-COVID. There was 2020 safety data was presented. That's pretty interesting as well. And then there were presentations on the Highway Safety Improvement Program, which, as most of you know, changed the way it's kind of run about a year ago. So there's new information out on that. And then there was a regulatory review. The workshop presentation link will take you to all of those. Same thing for the link for the action meeting. The FY22 annual budgets, the AB, I forget what the acronym is. The Annual Budgets Commonwealth Transportation Fund, CTF is what I was trying to say. That was approved at the June meeting. Same as Tiffany mentioned, the SYIP was approved. Then the annual safety performance targets that OIP sets were approved, and then the adoption of the Interstate Operations and Enhancement Program. That is basically the overarching umbrella funding program for all the interstates. The next CTB meeting, there's 2 of them. They're going to be in person at the VDOT auditorium. The workshop meeting is on July 20th at 10 a.m. The action meeting on the 21st, the following day at 9 a.m. As we mentioned before, the CTB approved the SIP. That did include all of the round 4 smart scale projects. Some of them had advanced funding. So if you're not yet aware of where your funding is, take a look at the SIP. And if you have any questions, let me know. As far as the fall line trail, we are currently working with OIP and a consultant to kind of go back through we're trying to identify all of the unfunded segments. So whether it's locally funded, privately funded, or state funded, we want to find out all the other segments, and we're trying to do a very detailed cost estimate for all of those segments so that we can provide to the CVTA sort of a budget for the fall line trail. That was at their request. And then we've got no upcoming public hearings in the RRTPO area. And that is my presentation.
Thank you, Liz. Appreciate the update. Any questions for VDOT?
Madam Chair, this is Chet.
Go ahead, Chet.
Just a note on the fall line work that VDOT is doing. I think we're looking at the CVTA probably having that back on their agenda maybe in September. So just timing wise, that's where things are shaking out.
Any other questions or comments? Moving on to future meeting topics. Pull those up here. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add to this list?
This is Chet. Just 2 things I wanted to bring back. The fall forum. There will probably be some discussion about technical topics or discussion items for that. And then if Tiffany's okay, we'll talk more about the schedule, but the work that Kimberly Horn is doing, I would expect would be something interesting for the TAC to hear about as we get into the next few months.
And that makes sense. We can try to time it if you want closer to when we have the draft or like the preliminary report. And I'm sure there'll be some opportunities for engagement too with TAC and with just the TPO in general on the plan. So we can talk offline.
Thanks.
Thank you. So I think the next item on the agenda is TAC member comments. Do we have anything from TAC members that you'd like to share for the good of the group? Okay, well, our next meeting is August 10th. I will not be chairing that as far as I know. And as a reminder, if you do have any topic suggestions, and if you have a speaker, that's even better, or if you want to be a speaker for the November 4th Transportation Forum, please send those to Chet. Also, if you could just let people know about the Conformity Report public input session between July 29th and the 24th. So if you have a social media account with your locality or however else you get information out, if you could share that. And if there's no other business, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.